Never seen that one coming. I don't know what else to do. My wife and I have been married for nearly 3 years. We got married on a whim, and most of that time we have spent apart. We both have problems with depression and family history of alcoholism and although she never drank and I have quit. She says she has attention deficit disorder, and she certainly has problems focusing. But I'm afraid I don't know much about the condition. She has been to see a few psychiatrists, and she has told me that they have told her that she is okay, but they have still prescribed her with medication. It's very difficult for me not to conclude that in this case, the cure is worse than the disease. She has self-harmed in the past and has had other medical issues. I don't like saying this, because it is difficult, impossible for me to objectively state how much is and isn't my fault, but the fact is that she is becoming increasingly abusive, and when she is upset and angry, she is beyond unreasonable. She yells insults, she shoves me, throws things, punches and kicks, hits me with objects, and has left me with large bruises, and tells me that her self-ex was my fault. We were not living in the same time zone at the time. I very much doubt that she tells her doctors that she behaves this way towards me, although it is possible. Her justification is always things like it was the straw that broke the camel's back, or that I am an appalling human being for whatever reason, and that I deserve to be hurt, and she will say good if I tell her that she has hurt me. What really upsets me is that she won't take any responsibility for the way she behaves. She will never acknowledge that what she does is wrong, only that it is my fault, that I am the one who should apologize. I don't know if this is a symptom of her condition that can be treated, or whether she would act this way regardless. If she does feel guilty about it, she never says so. The most she will ever acknowledge is that she wasn't proud of her behavior, or something like that. It happens regularly, and I'm tired of it. I want to be clear, she has not caused me significant anything yet. It's not the physical pain that concerns me. What hurts me so much is that she acts as if this is something she is almost entitled to, that why shouldn't she be insulting and violent if I have pissed her off? Some of her complaints against me are understandable, of course, but she also gets like this about the most minor of things, and I never know what is going to set her off. I am not an angel, far from it, but I do not hurt her, I don't yell, I don't cheat on her. Her hurt is always of the emotional kind, that I have not paid enough attention, that I said something thoughtless, that I am not loving enough, and so on. She is always trying to convince me that it is me who should make amends, that I am responsible for her behaving this way, that she is the injured party, and she seems convinced of this. Only occasionally does she even seem unsure, let alone repentant. When we're arguing, I do tell her that she's crazy, insane, a psychopath, which I feel bad about afterwards, but it is very difficult for me not to when someone is throwing heavy objects at me. I don't know how much my fault is or whether she is right about me, but I will say this, I would have no problem with anybody, friends, family, doctors, strangers, hearing a record of our arguments and how I have behaved. I am certain that she could not say the same. I don't know how normal any of this is. I don't know how to help her for the best, or how much more I can take. I would like to stay with her, but really don't see how I can, when she behaves this way and is completely unwilling to acknowledge that she bears any responsibility. She does kind of get help. In fact, I think if anything she gets too much of it. I'm just not sure how helpful it actually is. She is constantly reading things online, and buying books, which she doesn't read, but expects me to, and then lectures me about what they say, and going to see various different therapists, and psychiatrists, and things. She gets prescriptions for drugs that I don't think she needs, or rather, the disadvantages outweigh the advantages, and I get the impression the doctors are a little reluctant to prescribe them to her, but she is smart and charming, and once she gets an idea in her head, she fixates on it. Sigh. I have no real idea how honest she is with these professionals, but I do know that when she is in a temper tantrum, she has no compunction about trying to convince me that they agree that I'm in the wrong and a horrible person. 2. The example of her self-ex that is awful, of course, but she has said to me that she did it because of me, and she has never apologized for saying that, nor does she seem to think that she should, and when I confronted her with this, she did not withdraw the statement, just tried to dance around it. I encouraged her at the time to tell her psychiatrist that she says this to me, and to see how they respond, but I know that she won't. It is hurtful to me when, during an argument, she will spitefully repeat back to me something her therapist said about me, not least because nothing she has ever repeated back to me about me is actually that bad, but that she wants me to think that a professional thinks I'm in the wrong and a terrible person. That teacher is on her side, really hurts me, if that makes sense. Although, I suppose, I'm doing the same thing now by posting on this forum. Sorry for the splurge, but I have no one to talk to. I suppose I should give an example of what has upset her that is my fault. 2 years ago, I told her about a woman at my work having a crush on me. She says this when she was saying how much she loved me. The reason I did this was not very noble, but I was trying to show her that we did not have the kind of marriage that she said we were going to have, and I was tired of her telling me about guys having a crush on her. To be absolutely clear, this woman was somebody I worked with, and that was all. I did not cheat. I barely even knew this woman. My wife still brings this up now, constantly, as justification for why she behaves violently towards me. I am not proud of what I did, but I really am sick of her telling me that it means she can be abusive towards me, and that I'm the bad guy. Because she says this issue, and others, all of which involve me being the wrongdoer, are not resolved, but to be honest I don't think they will ever be resolved in her mind, because the more we discuss them, and she brings them up all the time, the more strident she gets and the more she seems to build the incidents up in her mind. She did not mention the above to me again until 3 months afterwards. It seems to encourage her in the belief that she can treat me as badly as she likes, and she's still the injured party. I'm pretty sure we're done, I'm very sorry to say. We've been here before quite a few times in the last 3 years. I actually wish I could publish some of our email conversations so I could prove to myself that I'm not the crazy abusive one, because yes, she is always trying to convince me that I am evil, and you do start to doubt yourself significantly. We have always resolved it, and most of the time, she is very sweet. But as soon as something, anything, I do upsets her, no matter how seemingly insignificant. For example, once recently it was that she suddenly remembered that a few weeks prior I had made an innocuous joke about her impersonating a particular accent. She will have a tantrum that can range from sleep on the couch sulking, up to the violence I mentioned. But this time I think I'm done. Before it was her who was doing the breaking up, but now I can't see how I can come back from this and still live with her, and at the moment it doesn't seem like she wants me to. There's no need for lawyers. We have no joint assets. Last time she went this far, she just sent me divorce papers to sign, which I did, which she then did nothing with. It'll be the same now. We don't live in the US, and neither of us has anything worth fighting over. I don't even care if we get divorced or not. I'm not going to get married again. I'm just tired of being treated this way, and then being told it's my fault. I guess I'll just move out, and that will be that. So, whether my wife is BPD, I wouldn't like to say. Her ex is very contentious, for me. I have tried to get her to tell her therapist, but she won't. I am fairly certain that she has not self-exed for 2 years. From my own perspective, what I find so, admittedly selfishly, hurtful, is that she will use it against me as a weapon, to say look what you have done to me, because she wants me to feel guilty about it, to feel that it is my fault. This has happened on 2 occasions, and the second time, the self-satisfied manner in which she flashed the scars at me and told me it was because of me, was frankly quite disturbing. When I told her I thought this to be unacceptable, she tried to obfuscate, without acknowledging that what I said was true, and also, when I told her she was attempting to emotionally blackmail me, she retorted that she was trying to get me to understand how awful things were for her, and that I am disgusting for accusing her of emotional blackmail because emotional blackmail is trying to get someone to do something, and she wasn't, to which I countered that I think she was. She was trying to make me feel responsible. The physical thing is not such a big thing to me at the moment, because I know that she is angry, furious in fact, and I should probably leave her alone, and she hasn't caused me any great physical pain, just bruises. What I find so upsetting about it, as per the title of this thread, is that she refuses to take any responsibility for it. As far as she is concerned, my horrible behavior, such as ignoring her, means that her extreme reaction is justified. I want to make note of a few coincidences, and one is that you discussed gaslighting in another thread, and that is something that my wife and I have discussed. I think she does it to me, to an extent, but not deliberately. I have no doubt that she is sincere. Equally, I think that if she read this, she would say that it is me who is gaslighting her, by trying to shift blame away from me and onto, say, her having BPD. I could give myriad examples, but I might as well start with the big one, which is what I mentioned before. Back in 2015, when she was telling me how much she loved me, I told her that a female I worked with had a crush on me. At the time my W said nothing, until 3 months later, trying to dismiss her hurt as irrational and talk about it with her therapist, from her perspective, gathering ammo for mine, and now she brings it up constantly, and I do mean probably at least once every couple of weeks, and she is never, ever, calm when she does so. She has occasionally even warned me that she is about to have a meltdown about it. She claims that the problem is not that it happened, but that it hasn't been resolved, that I refuse to discuss it. However, we have in fact discussed it once, calmly, something that she seems to have forgotten all about, and I have apologized on numerous occasions. I am reasonably sure that it will never be resolved to her satisfaction. She seems to have become convinced that this was the most despicable act that it is possible for a human being to perform, and I am exasperated and dismissive of it for this reason, and because the more we talk about it, the more it encourages her that her feeling is entirely correct. This is the worst crime of many, for which she regularly tantrums. I mean, that's not me being a complete garbage, right? I mean, right. Really could do with some reassurance on this, and many other things. I would certainly not say that my wife is a bad person. She can be very kind. She is a vegan and is deeply affected by the plight of animals, for example. She is a school teacher, and her younger pupils flat out adore her, and she is well liked by all her colleagues, and rightly so. The problem is with another odd coincidence. You wrote in a couple of different threads about BDP people behaving like a 4-year-old, and that's very strange, because I'm ashamed to say that is exactly what I accuse my wife of when she gets like this, and it's always 4, never a 3 or a 5-year-old. She does act like a 4-year-old, and not a well-behaved 4-year-old at that. I find her tantrums sometimes to be extraordinary, and I can't actually believe that a fully grown adult could even do such a thing. I compare arguing with her to coating yourself in butter then trying to climb a mountain made entirely of glass. There's nothing to grip onto. Example, she has a lot of issues with concentration. I constantly have to cajole her to do things, brush your teeth now, and she is always being distracted, usually by something online. This is a constant battle. A few weeks ago, while I was waiting for her to do something, set up a movie, I think, she was messing around on YouTube, so I picked up my laptop and started working. And she exploded at me. How dare I start doing something else while she is waiting for me, etc. I just didn't know how to respond. When she had calmed down, she still maintained that I was in the wrong, because she has ADHD, trouble focusing, and I should know this, whereas I do not. And I said to her, that is not what I am objecting to. If you have trouble focusing, that's okay, I'm not blaming you. What I object to in the strongest possible terms is that she, or anyone, would forcefully attack somebody else for doing something that they do to the other person routinely. And not only that, but while they are in the middle of actually doing it too. Sometimes I just want to cry, because I feel like if she would just try and restrain herself, everything would be fine. She lurches so violently between loving me and hating me, it has actually become somewhat of a game for us. Because she was breaking up with me so often and then accusing me of abandoning her and always talking about leaving and forcing her to be the bad guy. So that the next time we were arguing I pointed out that she always said it first. I hate you, you're a horrible person. When are you leaving? I want a divorce. I specifically told her to make mental note of this, that it was always her who brought it up first. And now she goes to elaborate lengths to not say it first. She will say everything else. Me. So you think we should just live in the same house and ignore each other forever? Her. I'm sure it won't be forever. I think she wants to put a name on what she is feeling and say, wow, it's ADHD, so I must take this. But she does act surprisingly sheepish when, for example, one of the drugs she has been prescribed is joked about as a party drug on a comedy show we were watching. And she has told me that 2 psychiatrists were of the see how it goes mentality when prescribing her meds she requested. And if that's what she told me, it makes me imagine that they were probably more reluctant than she makes out. She did tell me that her current psych said I was a good husband for basically insisting that she stop taking meds. She will talk endlessly about how relationships are about wants and needs and effective communication, but what she means is her wants and needs. She says I am a terrible communicator, true, and that I only ever bring things up that are bothering me when we're arguing. But on the one occasion I did calmly communicate a need to her, she became enraged, called me selfish, and so on. It feels to me like she doesn't care about my wants and needs at all. She will tell me endlessly about what husbands have to do for their wives. She will give me a list. But on the one occasion I asked her what she thought wives have to do for their husband. She seemed quite taken aback, and the best she could muster was to mutter something about kindness. Bonding being an example. I feel like bonding for her is not about mutual pleasure. She views it as a means of reassuring her insecurities. Whether I experience pleasure or not isn't something that seems to be a consideration for her, except insofar as, I'd better enjoy it because otherwise she will feel insecure and have a tantrum. Sleeping with her is not fun and exciting like it should be, it feels like a test. Although in her defense, she has made a bit of an effort in this department, and this might actually be my issue rather than hers. She keeps getting worse. It always ramps up. I have admitted to her quite frankly that I am terrified of her, not because I'm worried about being physically hurt, but because I never know when she will next explode. So I am nervous all the time, and reluctant to say anything to her, discuss things with her, etc. It started with yelling, then knocking off my glasses and shoving me, although in her defense, on one of these occasions I was poking her to get her to talk to me, not in a violent way, but in an irritating childlike way, then kicking, then punching. And now we have moved on to all of those things, plus hitting me with objects, like hairbrushes, and throwing things. The largest bruise she has given me is when she threw a big pot of moisturizer at me. As I said, I really am tired of walking on eggshells. So, she says something that is upsetting her to her therapist. Her therapist sympathizes, and she takes this as absolute unassailable proof that the entire world would be on her side, and so I must be forced to bend to the will of the masses. I have tried to point out to her that her therapist is hardly likely to say, "That's ridiculous." Instead, of course, they're going to say "Tell me more," or something similar, and that if I went to a therapist and told them the situation from my perspective, they would sympathize with me too. That's what they're paid for. All the time, she was constantly telling me about guys trying to get her number, flirting with her. This was partly the reason I said it, because I was tired of it. But she always has an excuse as to why it's acceptable when she does it. Oh, that guy was 65, so. Or if you didn't want me to tell you, you should have said. I could say the same thing. The thing that gets me, what I am always looking for from her, is some kind of acknowledgement that my point of view is valid, if she would just accept some responsibility for the problems. But she won't. As far as she is concerned, she is the trodden-down martyr who only becomes enraged and violent now because she has long ago grown tired of always being the reasonable one and me being cruel and impossible. This is how she sees herself in our relationship. She certainly does this entire list thing. One of our major issues is that as soon as a minor thing starts her up, she will move on to the list of charges against me. I will give an exasperated reaction, and this will infuriate her further. She has even started accusing me of things I told her about before we were even married, before we even knew each other. For example, she attacked me a little while ago for comforting a friend's girlfriend when she was hysterical. This was before I had even met my wife, and all I did was try and calm this person down. Another example, and this is probably number 2 on my wife's list of reasons why I am evil, and also an issue on which I have begun to seriously doubt myself. When we got married, I gave my wife my mother's engagement ring. My mother died young, and this is one of the few things that I have left of her. I had the ring fitted to my wife and so on. I told my wife that giving her the ring was no big deal, partly because it wasn't. Neither I nor my sisters are particularly sentimental, but mainly because I knew she would not accept it if I didn't. She was already making a rather adorable fuss about it. My wife did not get me a wedding ring, and I did not wear one, although I would have liked to. She would bring this up, "Why don't I get myself a wedding ring?" And I would say to her, "I'm not buying myself a cheap ring and wearing it just to assuage some strange female jealousy." I didn't put it in those words, obviously, but that if she wanted to buy me a ring, or even choose one for me and I would pay for it, I would be very happy to wear it. True. I even sent her a link to a catalog of rings and told her to pick one, which she didn't. Then fast forward a year or so, and we had an argument on the phone. Next thing I hear from her, she sends me a message saying something like, "I have sent back your mother's rings. I will not contact you again. Goodbye." I respond the same way I always do, "Okay, still love you. Bye." When we have made up again, she still argues that she is the righteous one, and I am the ass, because I refused to wear a wedding ring, and would not discuss it, and because I made it seem like my mother's ring was meaningless. I did not refuse. I would have worn one. In fact, I would have been very happy to do so. But if I just buy myself a cheap ring, that isn't a wedding ring, it's just me buying myself a cheap ring, and I would also be curious to know the actual reason why my wife would want me to wear a cheap ring that I have bought myself. And as for me not wanting to discuss it, I feel I made my position clear, and I didn't want to discuss it, because discussing it meant one of those round tables that would usually end with me being criticized for whatever reason. And I just want to scream, because whose past mother's engagement ring means nothing to them, and even if it did, what gives you the right to criticize them because of it? She still brings this up regularly as evidence of how awful I am, and I do feel a bit like I'm living in an alternative reality, because I give someone my dead mother's engagement ring, they send it back to me in a fit of pique, and I quote him the bastard. Again, this is something that I really could do with someone, anyone, reassuring me that my perspective here is not completely wacky. I'm sorry to say that I would like to go to marriage counseling for this reason too, just so the facts could be presented to an outside party, and I could say I'm not crazy, right? I have a point. A while ago, I was very sick for a day, vomiting, chills, the whole bit. My wife was very sweet, made me tea, fetched me medicine, etc. That evening we watched a movie, it was nice. Then afterwards, my wife insisted on watching some TV show that I really didn't want to watch. No, I said, I really can't bear those types of shows, and I am very tired and still feeling unwell, and it's late. She continued to argue that we have to watch this show. You can watch it, I say, but I need to go to bed. Eventually I give up trying to convince her, and just go to bed. Result, she sleeps on the couch and sulks all next day because I abandoned her. She wants to have it both ways. When it suits her, she acts as if she is a child and I am her parent. Then when she is irritated, she acts as if she is the parent who has the right, perhaps even the duty, to chastise the child, me. I know it sounds strange, but when she hates me, like now, she will consider me to be pure evil personified. But when she loves me, she will tell me repeatedly how much she loves me, and how desperately she needs me, and she really does struggle to cope without me. We have been doing this dance ever since we got married, and she will flip from one to the other on the scantiest and strangest of pretexts. We are currently still living in the same tiny place but avoiding each other since my wife's last blow about 1 week ago. She's in the bedroom, I'm in the living room. I get up super early, she stays up all night. Bizarrely, it actually kind of works. We've not said 3 words to each other in a week. She sent me an email, as she always does after her rages, in which she is ostensibly civil and that I've been reasonable so long but I'm just tired of you now type of way. States we are getting divorced, then adds a paragraph at the end about how I am the worst thing that has ever happened to her, she will never forgive me, etc. This has happened before, and usually I just reply, like okay, or see you later, or still love you, bye, or such. My wife has some mental health problems, and I don't know much of it is that, and how much is just her personality. Reading things in the other thread, it seems like she might possibly have borderline personality disorder. But anyway, I can't see how she and I can carry on, so we'll have to break up. And part of me wants to send a reply email and tell her exactly what I think, that her behavior has been an absolute disgrace. She is physically and verbally abusive, then plays the victim, etc. Now obviously, partly this is catharsis. It would make me feel better. But also, partly, I can't help feeling that it might actually help her a bit. Maybe. I have not been the greatest husband in the world, but I'm pretty sure I coddled her way too much. She is also young, beautiful, and rather adorable, and the youngest child of 6, which means that everybody tends to coddle her a bit too much. I have no doubt she is sincere in what she says, so I think that maybe, if I give her what for, it might make her sit up and take note. Or it might not. It might just make her go even more bat crap. Does anyone have any thoughts, please? I don't want to do it too much in anger. It's difficult to know what to do that is for the best. I feel like she needs to be told. But also, this could just be my opportunity to slip away from a bad situation as painlessly and quietly as possible. I haven't replied to her, although she will probably attack me for that too. You're too rude to even reply to my messages. And don't worry, if I ever needed it, I have reams and reams and reams of emails of her telling me to go redacted myself. She is baiting me for a response, but not for any future play. She just wants a response. This is what always happens. She explodes for no reason. I try to talk to her. She violently rebuffs me. She pouts for a week. Then she's still mad but wants to engage with me and tell me how awful I am, how I have betrayed her, etc. This is the dance we do. I very much doubt we'll end up in divorce court. No kids, no assets, no shared accounts or anything. The one shared account we did have, she unilaterally closed after an argument, without consulting me, and, as far as I know, spent all the money. This is what I was going to reply to her. Excuse me, but you will never forgive me. For what? I'm fairly certain you don't know, just as I'm fairly certain you don't actually know why you are infuriated. This is why when I ask you what it actually is that I've done to you, you attack me with generalities. You have singularly failed to come up with anything terrible that I have done to you. The absolute worst you can think of is that 2 years ago I told you that a co-worker had a crush on me. For that, and lesser crimes, you have maintained an intermittent campaign of physical, verbal, and emotional abuse. And then you claim that you are the victim. You need help which I cannot provide, even if you wanted me to. I made a mistake by being an enabler for you for as long as I was. I'm sorry, sweetie, I really am. A week ago, less than 10 minutes ago, my wife physically X'd me again. I'm sick and tired of it. She hit me repeatedly with a block of ice, and I think she has done something to my elbow. It's painful, and there's a lump appearing. My elbow is quite painful. I think she might have done some actual damage this time. I don't know what to do. I do love her, and she is making an effort by talking to her psych and going to MC, although to be honest, I think she only wants to go to MC to talk about my misdeeds and get what she wants. I know that's very unfair and I shouldn't say that. Next time she will probably X me over the head and might finish me. Her response was that she'd probably get off by pleading that she needs ongoing treatment, which is not exactly what you want to hear. She just won't take any responsibility for it. As far as she is concerned, she is the innocent victim, and she only lashes out at me because I deserve it, because I'm a bad communicator, or because 2 years ago I told her about a co-worker having a crush on me. I try and get through to her that I actively, indeed desperately, encourage her to say these things to someone other than me, marriage counselor, police, random strangers, and see how righteous they think she is. The other day she noticed a bruise on my back and asked me how I got it, and I said probably when she'd thrown something at me, which is almost certainly how I got it, and then she acted indignant, like I was the a-hole for saying that. I do worry that either she is seriously mentally ill, or I am. She is utterly convinced, and convincing, when she says these things. I guess I'll either figure out how to leave her or I'll just get my brains bashed in. We don't have any kids, no joint assets, nothing like that. It should be a clean break without too many complications. Although this move to another country did cost me a lot financially. Plus, I paid my wife's taxes for her. I didn't truly know what she was going to be like. She could be volatile, but this is new. It's not the physical abuse that bothers me so much. It's that I am sick to death of having to walk on eggshells around the one person I am supposed to be able to trust more than anyone. I'm sick to death of monitoring myself for fear of saying something that will set her off. I'm sick to death of being told it's my fault because I shouldn't upset her when she makes up the criteria for what she finds upsetting as she goes along. I am frightened of her, not because I think she will hurt me physically, but because she is so tempestuous. A couple months later, I'm feeling frightened for the future and resentful of my ex. I posted about it before on this forum when we are going through the breakup. Wife was regularly violent and openly disdainful of my needs, while insisting that her needs must be met, or else. I'm sure that a lot of this was the result of a mental health issue, and her therapist said as much to me, that our marriage might have been able to work if I had been able to endure it while she learned new behaviors. But I was an enabler. My ex still maintains that it was largely my fault, and that it was things like me not reassuring her insecurities enough and being a bad communicator that forced her to attack me and ignore my needs. I try not to engage with her at all anymore. I only reply to her messages about anything needs be because of the divorce. She is still very angry that I abandoned her, which is a charge I really don't feel I can even begin to address. Something happened yesterday to make this wound raw for me, and I am annoyed at myself how important it is to me that ex-wife realize certain things, that the breakdown of the marriage was because of her behavior. For example, of the problems in our relationship, me not telling her she was beautiful often enough, or her attacking and showing no remorse, which should have taken top priority as a problem to be dealt with and which really could have waited. I really want for her to understand that she could have avoided it all. I know it's stupid, and I'm certainly not going to contact her about it, that's why I'm venting on here, but I want her to realize the truth. It was her crappy behavior that wrecked the marriage. I still can't shake the horrible feeling that if one morning she had just woken up and said to herself, you know, from now on I am never going to throw another tantrum. There's never a good enough reason for it, or she would have just acknowledged what a gargantuan problem it was in our relationship. It could have and would have been fine. We could have worked through everything else. Maybe I should write her a letter never to send. Of course, I am partly to blame for her terrible behavior too, because I allowed it to happen. She even once said to me that if I didn't like her violent behavior, I should have had an intervention for her, and at the time I scoffed, because it seemed like such a ridiculous thing to say. Adults shouldn't need to be told that physically attacking your partner is not acceptable, but I do know that I enabled her. I didn't give her proper boundaries, and I always caved when, for example, after the latest blow-up, she would sulk for a few days and then she would tell me she was going crazy and she needed my help and such. Very rarely a genuinely contrite apology though. Although she swears it could never happen, I think she'll get into a new relationship. Maybe she has already, and I imagine that after a while the same problems will surface. I hope not, because I really would like for her to be happy, but to be completely honest, I can't imagine it. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it was just me and her, and she'd be fine with anyone else. I'm really warming up to vent now. She never viewed therapy in the right way. She liked the sympathetic ear, and I know I'm being self-absorbed here, but I think she liked going to therapy because it allowed her to gather ammunition to use against me in arguments. My therapist agrees that you're in a hole. Any right-thinking person would agree that I'm righteous and you treat me terribly. After going to the same therapist 6 or 7 times, she'd quit and go to a different one. I went to a couple of therapy sessions with her as marriage counseling, and I know that one therapist thought my wife had borderline personality disorder, and someone said the same thing when I originally posted on this forum, and, whatever label you give it, I think she had a mental problem which effectively turned her into a small child the second she felt threatened, which would be things like me not agreeing with her emphatically enough about politics. Tantrums are manageable when it's a small child, but when it's an adult, you don't know how to respond. How can someone be so unreasonable? How can they be such a hypocrite, etc.? My mother was an alcoholic who committed acts, and I always felt the same way about her. She could have given up drinking and made everybody's life tolerable, but she chose not to. I'm sure I carried a lot of these types of feelings into my marriage. It's the familiar lament of every marriage breakup, but I can't help thinking about what could have been. My wife could be an absolute delight, and indeed, she was, 90% of the time. But 10% of the time she was a nightmare, utterly impossible, and that made the 90% of the time impossible too, because I was always just walking on eggshells, waiting for the next explosion. It's pathetic, I know, but why didn't she love me enough to care about my feelings, and how badly it hurt me in our marriage when she behaved this way? Why couldn't she have done whatever it took to restrain herself? The next phase of my life is going to be very lonely, and I have always struggled with depression, sadness. I work from home, and even going to a work meeting once every 2 months is stressful for me. Never mind going out and socializing with new people. Although I am going to have to move again soon, so I'll just have to force myself to go out and meet people, and maybe some angel sent by the spaghetti monster will swoop down and help me. My comment: everybody has a limit of what they can handle, and you finally had the courage to say, no more. You are worth it. You deserve to be respected. You deserve to be treated with love. You deserve somebody who is kind. You deserve to have a future that is happy and meaningful with somebody beside you. She is clearly not dealing with her true issues because she would accept her part in the divorce and acknowledge that you deserve better than she can give you right now. Maybe one day she will get an awakening.